Hello, everyone. This is Nick Sager, one of the leaders of the Nashville Tableau user group. I'm accompanied by Jim Daner, Eric Howard, and Gilmore Connors. And our special guest speaker today is Steve Mostello. If you're just joining us, you are on mute. That's by intention, no offense. However, we will be watching the Q&A section where you can ask questions as you have them. And interrupt Steve if it proves opportune. This session is being recorded to the cloud, so be aware of that. And to introduce Steve, he is a lead solution engineer at Tableau. He's been working with Tableau for 6 years now and working largely in the API and OEM space. But I'll let him speak about what he does. He knows much better than I do. And if you would all virtually clap your hands and welcome Steve Mostello.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me, everybody. And just real quick, are you seeing my slide that says what's new in 2020.2?
Yes, sir.
All righty. So again, my name is Steve Mostello. I'm lead solution engineer with Tableau. I've been with Tableau for 6 years now. The first 3 years, I worked directly with our customers in Tennessee and Nashville, and then throughout the Southeast. And in the last 3 years, I've been working as an SE as well, working with our partners. So instead of working directly with customers, I work directly with our partners and enabling them and helping them with all things Tableau and helping them develop solutions using Tableau. So again, thank you for coming. And earlier this month, we released 2020.2. Hopefully, many of you have downloaded it and started playing with it. And as you have seen, it contains significant enhancements to support your analytics journey and elevate your relationship with data. Some of the things that we released were defining relationships between database tables for more flexible, intuitive analysis with the addition of relationships to Tableau's data model, and also the ability to monitor key performance indicators for your business from anywhere, so being able to utilize those metrics. And then dynamically changing the members of a set to drive complex analysis with set control. And so without further ado, I'll get right into that. And what I will be talking about today are those features that are within visual analytics, web and mobile, new features for IT and governance, features for Prep Builder, then data management, and then server management add-on. And so at the very end, the very first thing I'll be talking about will be relationships, since that is the biggest thing, probably the biggest thing since version 1.0 of Tableau and how you connect to data. But after I go through these slides, I'll go through another short example of that with slides to make it really kind of hopefully a little bit easier and understandable. And then I'll also actually go into Tableau Desktop as well. And I'll also show an example of connecting out to a data source using relationships. So let's get moving on. So the features for visual analytics. So we're enhancing Tableau's data model with new capabilities to help customers more easily analyze data across multiple tables and different levels of detail without having to learn advanced database concepts or write the really extravagant custom SQL code. And with creating relationships between tables makes analyzing data stored in that common data warehouse schemas like stars and snowflakes a lot easier. And Tableau will handle multiple levels of detail in a single data source, so it's helping you to make it easy to slice and dice the data without writing specialized calculations to control the level of detail. And since these enhanced data sources can answer a wider variety of questions, organizations will be able to consolidate the number of distinct data sources that they have and that they create and maintain within Tableau Server. And so what you're saying here in this animated viz is that we're connecting to multiple tables, all related to sales data. And when dragging in the customers table, you can define the relationship by specifying the cardinality and referential integrity between the customer ID and the orders table and the customers table. And with these relationships, Tableau will bring in the data at the right level of detail during your analysis. And so, like I said, at the end of this, after I go through all the features, I'll kind of break this down a little bit more because I'm sure there's a lot of questions around relationships here. And we're expanding Tableau's range of analytical options as well to power your dashboards and how people interact with them. In 20.2, you can now perform set analytics with the same ease and familiarity as using a quick filter to drive complex analysis. With these new set controls, you can dynamically change the number of members of a set using a quick filter-like interface. It supports both single and multiple selections by simply clicking to select or deselect items to control which values are in the set. And then behind the scenes, these selections act as inputs that are fed into the calculations that are driving the visualization. And your end users now have a straightforward way to leverage complex calculations that the authors have already created to drive their own insights. And since the domain refreshes automatically, the freshest data is always reflected in the dashboards. And so what you're seeing here in this animated viz, it describes average housing prices in various outcodes, what we know here in the US as postal codes. This is for London. And then London is built on concentric circles, and houses are more expensive as you get closer to the center of the city. So the more expensive the outcode, the more orange the color is. And so if we select the outcodes E4, E5, and E6, they're located near the edge of London to belong in your membership. So this means that we're averaging the prices together and then comparing that to the average of the rest of the outcodes. So this is why a lot of the outcodes suddenly look more red. They're higher in the average price compared to the outer edge areas we've selected in the set. And we can keep adjusting our set members to see how different groupings compare. This is just one example of how to use set controls. There's many other things that you'd be able to do with this too if you're more creative. And then set actions, we came out this a while back, but set actions got even more powerful now with 2 new selection modes. So you can now incrementally add and remove values from a set by interacting with the marks in the view, even after the selection has been cleared. So you can click on it and then it appears in the tooltip menu to add or remove those selections. And then now you can connect to Tableau directly to your location data in Esri by simply entering the ArcGIS server URL or the GeoService API URL. And then automated extract refreshes ensure that the visualizations are always up to date and enable you to spend less time sourcing data and more time in analysis. Then we've expanded Tableau spatial database connections. So now you can connect out to Oracle spatial data and then instantly visualize that in Tableau. And explain data we came out with about a year or so ago. And so now dashboard authors can control which columns are modeled in explain data. So with the ability to select which columns are included and excluded from the explanations, authors can better curate their analytical experience. So now explain data will also now surface multiple extreme values, allowing you to explore more than one outlier at a time. And with As Data, that too came out last year, and adding new improvements to that. So now you can create custom suggestions and consistent semantic context with data roles. So with these customized suggestions, data source owners can now provide relevant prompts that give users insights to the data and the types of questions that they can ask. And the data roles make it easy to add important context to field definitions and synonyms and apply that information across all your data sources. Other improvements include support for scripted data sources and improved enterprise controls too. And this is, like I said, this is really very helpful for users who may just be getting started with Tableau and don't know anything about it and just want to be able to ask questions as they would to you directly. Then a big new feature for web and mobile is metrics. So metrics allows simple metrics to be created from almost any view or dashboard. saving you a lot of time and effort for your Tableau data stewards. So, metrics, they also allow key numbers to be easily tracked across any number of dashboards, providing value to those who may not be heavy Tableau users, but they still want or need to be informed without having to click through multiple dashboards. So metrics is supported on Tableau Mobile and allows all customers to track their data anytime and anywhere they want. Because many times, like what you're seeing here in the screenshot here, people would have to go out to 3, 4, maybe even 9 different dashboards to go find the information that they want. So now they can go to each one of those dashboards, choose which metric that they want, and then make that a favorite. And so that way, when they go into favorites, they see all of those metrics right there without having to go in through 8 or 9 different dashboards. Now we have view recommendations are in Tableau Mobile, so you can get personalized suggestions that instantly connect you to all the relevant vises. And this is powered by machine learning. And these recommendations, they leverage users' preferences and surface vises that others with similar viewing habits found interesting and are popular on your site. And then with the Home tab, you can find recommendations in a dedicated channel on your Tableau mobile app. Now you can connect to and sign in with Tableau mobile app when Tableau server is configured with OpenID authentication. So you can leverage the default browser on your device, like in Safari on iOS and Chrome on Android. And then when authenticating and remain logged in, and authenticating when remain logged into the browser as well. The secure exchange between the browser and the mobile app is based on the key components of the OpenID Connect standard called, it's short as PKCE, which is a proof key for code exchange. And then Tableau Mobile for Intune is a new app that provides a quick and secure way to view, analyze, and leverage the data that's in your organization on Microsoft's Intune enterprise management platform. And the app is compatible with iOS 13. It includes a design that is really fast and intuitive and an improved search and browsing experience that is consistent with Tableau Server and Tableau Online, as well as enhanced offline capabilities that are quick to load and offer richness and interactivity for all of your visualizations. And I talked about earlier about being able to favorite your or be able to create metrics and favorite them. And so now you can manually sort your favorited content on Tableau, on both server and online. So from the grid view, you can just simply drag and drop your favorites in the order you want to see them and bring those most important right up front and center. So after you favor those metrics, you can put them all at the front so that when you browse to it on your mobile device, they're all right there. It makes it really simple to find that information or those metrics that you normally look at. So sharing your work and exploring your insights from others just got even easier. So now you can open a Tableau workbook or upload it straight to the web without having to use desktop, which that's probably many of you be happy about. So you can simply select the workbook you want to upload and publish it directly to your site, either on server or online. And so obviously the only people that are allowed to do that are the ones with the appropriate publishing permissions will be able to do that. So what do we have around IT governance? So now server administrators, they can configure multiple analytics extension connections in Tableau Server. So before, this was formerly known as external service. And before you can only have, administrators can only set one per site. So if you wanted to have, if some people were using R and then some were using Python, you had to choose, and you had to choose for the whole server. And so now teams using different R, Python, and other external data science environments, they can share their work with consumers across the same server. So you're able to do that with sites, being able to do that per site now. And settings are even easier than ever to configure with the UI controls or via the server REST API. So updates around webhooks, you can now enable webhooks at the site level, giving you more fine-grained control across your deployment of server or online. And then REST API updates, so you can now programmatically export a workbook as a PowerPoint file, and which makes it a lot easier to operationalize those traditional reporting workflows. And you can also lock nested projects programmatically too. All right, in Prep Builder, so now you can connect to Salesforce directly within Tableau Prep Builder and be able to connect out to your Salesforce data sources now. And then whether you're using Prep Builder or Conductor, you can incrementally add fresh data to the flow, and this saves you a lot of time and resources, preventing the need to rerun the entire data set. So you can just refresh it and add the data incrementally as opposed to doing the whole data source. Next, we have a data management add-on. So now you can get a better understanding of all the assets on your server or site. So from the external assets page, you can filter by connection type, certifications, or data quality warnings. So if you want to look to find out what data sources may have issues or data quality warnings, now you can search on those. The Lineage tool is powerful to understanding the relationship between all the different data assets on your deployment. And so now you can see not only down to the sheet level, but also see the dashboards too in the Data Lineage window. So data quality warnings, they make it possible to let your users know when a data asset is flagged, whether because the data is under maintenance, it's stale, or for whatever other reason. And so now you have a high visibility data quality warning. Not only let users know about the issue, but make sure that they don't miss it. And so what you're seeing here is up at the top part of the window, you're seeing that data quality warning. Before that wouldn't pop up like that. Now it actually pops up there. And when creating a new workbook, you can filter the data assets by those with or without their presence of a data quality warning. This allows your users to be informed about the status of the data you're connecting to. All right, for the server management add-on, we've added 2 new views to give you a better insight into the health of your Tableau server deployment. The new backgrounder view gives you additional insight into the backgrounder load and how long the jobs run, and events like failures, cancellations, and completions. And then the new stale content view helps you identify unused content based on a customizable parameter that you can establish for your Tableau server. So that way you can remove that stale content, because probably like many environments, I know even here at Tableau, there's a lot of unused assets that get out there, and this way you can find those and safely get rid of them if people haven't been using them for a considerable amount of time. Then also with hot configuration here, there are many common TSM commands that can be implemented without having to restart the Tableau server. And then hot config commands are clearly identified in the command line when you're making changes. And then the Tableau server installation pre-check. So now what that is that you can ensure a smooth installation and an upgrade experience. So Tableau server, it automatically performs a bunch of checks as you start the initialization or upgrade process. And these checks, they're designed to detect common errors and issues like permissions or credentials or even the base ports that can crop up during your upgrade installation of Tableau server. And you can also perform this check at any time with a TSM command. And today this capability is for Windows, but hopefully in the near future here, we'll bring it to Linux as well.
Hey, Steve?
Yeah.
I actually have a question about that, and if you need to table it, we can, but
sure.
On the heels of this Tableau installation pre-check and Tableau 2020.2 making installations easier,
Mhm.
There was a question in the Q&A about it. Are there any things to be careful for when upgrading to 2020.2? Maybe some things that have already been reported, or just known factors to consider that are really important regardless of the version when upgrading?
Yeah, the best thing to do is always look at the release notes, because in the release notes we'll have that type of information if there's some things that you need to be watch out for, or known issues within the release. So always go check the release notes again, because in the release notes will tell you everything that's new within that release, and anything that you need to keep an eye on or know about.
Great, thanks.
And since we're talking about Linux, so you can now install the resource monitoring tool, or what we call the RMT agent, on top of your Linux-based Tableau server deployment. So now you get enhanced visibility in the performance of your Tableau server processes and the underlying hardware. We're also working on a Linux-based RMT host, hopefully coming out in the near future, because currently the RMT host, it needs to be installed on a Windows-based machine. But now you can actually monitor those Linux-based server deployments. Nick, are there any other questions that I'm going to go through kind of a demo with the slides here on the data modeling capability? Are there any other questions?
Not at present.
Before we get into it? Okay.
There was one that I fielded also about server and publishing a later version of desktop to an older version of server. But I believe I answered that to the person's satisfaction.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
You're doing great.
Thanks. All right. So let's go in and demo the new data modeling capability, which is called relationships. So with relationships, we're making it even easier, even though it's harder for me to say that, for users to perform analysis across multiple tables of data. So in the previous versions of Tableau, you had to choose which type of join you needed to perform when combining tables, and often you weren't sure what the best join was. So now you can choose the tables, and Tableau will figure the best way to join the tables based on the view that was created, or needs to be created, I should say. And so relationships are a flexible way to combine data from multiple tables. Users can define the matching fields between the tables, so you still have to do that. We'll figure out the join, but you still have to tell us what fields you need to connect on, unless it's obvious. Well, Tableau, just like before, Tableau does its best guess as to what fields we need to match on. And then Tableau generates automatic joins based on the current state of the analysis you're trying to do. So relationships postpone joins to the time and context of the analysis. So this preserves the native level of detail in your data and only queries those tables that are needed based on the fields in the viz. So when you combine tables using relationships, it's like a custom flexible data source for every viz, all in a single data source. So previously, users, they would often combine tables by pre-aggregating their data to a single level of detail in custom SQL or even database views. And now when analyzing multiple tables, Tableau can automatically combine the relevant tables at the right level of detail at analysis time. Some customers have described this as ETL on the fly. So previously with pre-aggregated data, and the detail would be lost, limiting the variety of purposes a data source can serve. Now a data source can preserve all the detail for all of its source tables. And this enables users to answer unanticipated questions, serving more use cases with a single data source. And more flexible data source also means fewer data sources and less maintenance of those data sources. So combining tables of data can quickly be tricky and error prone. And with joins, users, they unintentionally filter their data, while relationships always preserves those measures. Now, important values like money can never go missing. And then another challenge with manual data prep is that users, they have to pay close attention to the order of joins and aggregations with relationships, joins and aggregations, and now with relationships, Tableau handles that automatically. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail here. So joining two tables results in a third new table. This isn't specific to relationship, but this is fundamental. And when joins are executed up front in data preparation, all your subsequent analysis happens on this new table. The data in the new table, it forgets how it got there, so valuable information like level of detail of the original table is lost. In relationships, it combines and analyzes tables simultaneously in generating the exact result set required for your specific analysis. And now this has numerous benefits. So because of relationships versus the source tables and their original structure, measures automatically aggregate to their native level of detail. And so analysis time, and so being able to handle those unmatched values, you know, that since the unmatched values are handled individually per viz, a single data source can simultaneously support all the join types, such as inner, left, right, and then the full outer joins too. And then Tableau only pulls data from the tables that are relevant for the visualization. If you're only analyzing a single table, no join happens at all. And users can add more tables to their data source with no impact on query time. And when you combine tables using relationships, it's like creating a custom flexible data source for every viz on a single data source. And so that's everything that I have with the new capabilities. If you want to go out and look at all the new features, I highly encourage you to go out to tableau.com and look at the new features there, the explanation of all those, the release notes that I mentioned earlier. And then as always, we have the beta that usually comes out 2 to 3 months before it's actually released. And so if you go to pre-release.tableau.com, that's where you can go to sign up for it if you haven't already done so. You can also get to it by going to this link here on the screen, which is product/coming soon. But I always highly encourage to take a look at that, at the pre-release, so that way you can kind of get comfortable with it before it actually comes out and before your organization actually installs it as well. And that way it gives you some lead time, especially if you're the administrator for your environment, to give you the ability to take a look at it. Also, you can, some of you may not be able to, have the ability to install the server version and of the beta release, and that's okay. What you could go do is, if you go out to, you can sign up for a Tableau developer sandbox. If you just go out to Google and just do a search on Tableau developer sandbox, you can get a sandbox account, and that's going to be a Tableau Online account. And it's always that Tableau Online account that you're signing up for, it's always going to have the bleeding edge of Tableau. Like right now it is 20.2, but probably in the next few weeks they'll upgrade that, and they'll upgrade that to the next beta release. So those features that are coming in Tableau Server, that's one way of being able to look at those capabilities by utilizing that developer sandbox. So you can take a look at what it's going to look like and experience it firsthand without having to install Tableau Server in a VM or on some other machine. So, but with that, as I mentioned, I did want to go in a little bit more with relationships here and kind of explain that and actually show that within the product itself. And actually, before I do that, Nick, are there any additional questions? Because I don't have that up on my screen here. Are there any additional questions anybody has posted?
There aren't any in the Q&A chat, but I have a couple.
Okay.
Uh,
You're not allowed to ask any. No, go ahead. Let me go
the
through this. Let me go through this. And
well,
then I'm sure I probably still won't answer your questions. But
they're
go ahead.
pretty straightforward, actually. I mean, they're relevant to what you've talked about so far.
Okay.
One would be the metrics thing that you demonstrated. It said it was available on the web and on
Oh.
Tableau mobile. Is
Mhm.
on the web the same as Tableau server?
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to have that was something else I was going to show here. Yeah, let me bring that up here real quickly. Oh, there we go. Bear with me 1 second.
Okay. Well, and as you do that, am
Oh, there it
I
is.
right in
Sorry.
thinking that the short answer is yes, that
I'm sorry. Can you ask your question one more time?
so the metrics, the new feature of metrics that's available, quote, on the web and on Tableau mobile.
Hmm.
And I was asking if on the web is the same as Tableau server.
Yeah, it's so if I would have had my installation of my mobile device here up here, I forgot to install it because I recently had to upgrade my machine here, and I would have installed that. But yeah, so with the metrics, so this is what I had done. Actually, I'll just bring it up here just to show this real quickly. But what your then user would do is if they wanted to see this metric right here, this profit 12.5%, they could click on that, then go to metrics, and then they're able to click create here. And then if we just step back and look at the connected metrics, I see the profit ratio that I just added. I'm gonna make that my favorite. And so now when I go into favorites, and this would be the same way if I was on my phone or my iPad device and I went to favorites, I would see these actually in a nicer way, probably in a column of two for each row. I would see those metrics and would be able to scroll through them and see, okay, here my profit ratio is 12.5%. My sales is 2.3 million. And the other capability that I was showing too is that talking about is that you have the ability to rearrange these.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can rearrange them. So that way, when you're looking at them in your browser, or on your, excuse me, when you're looking at them on your phone, they're gonna be in the order that you would normally you want to see them that are most important to you.
Great.
That
And I
makes
think
sense?
it does. And that
Okay,
more than answered my question. Thank you.
great. Yep.
And then one thing I've noticed as far as the benefits of relationships, like the way I'm thinking about it is it's kind of like the best of both worlds of doing joins and blending. And I'm curious if there's like a quick answer to how Tableau can be performant with relationships where data blending proved to be so slow. And if that's not a quick answer to that question, we can just move on.
Sure, that's a good question. Let me think about that one for just a second. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Well, part of yeah, I think I might have to get back to you on that one. That's actually a really good question.
No worries.
Yeah.
I think the only other question would be before you go offline, if you could put those URLs that you put in the PowerPoint
Mm-hmm.
in the chat for people so they can easily click
Sure,
and try those places out.
will do.
Great. Thank you. That was the extent of my questions.
All right. So what I wanted to show here, so this is relationships, and this is 20.2. And probably the first thing that you'll notice that when you're looking and you connect to a data source, and this one's kind of a basic data source, but nonetheless, when you look at it, you don't see a number of records. And part of the reason is that what we're doing here is that when you're looking at that information, we're breaking it out, and that we're listing it for every table, what the dimensions are, and just below that, all the measures. And so you know, this, what you're actually going to see there, instead of that number of records, you're going to see the name of the data source and account. So that's going to be, because they're, in this one, they're, we're just going to look at the population. And so this is just giving me, you know, that count, the population here, which is actually just the number of records. But now if I want to actually go and add a table to this, what I'm going to do, so when you first come into it, you might be thrown off a little bit, and actually when you go and join another table, you're like, oh my gosh, I got this weird yellow thing, what we're calling the noodle there. You know, how can I go back? I don't want to do it this way because I'm not familiar with it and I'm not sure really what I'm doing. I was more comfortable with it the old way. That's fine. So after you bring in your first data source or your first table here, if you just double click on it, you get the view that you saw before. This is the classic view. So now when I want to bring in crimes, when I want to bring this in, and to get the crimes by the population here, I'm going to do an inner join. And then when I come back over to my relationships table, or excuse me, my relationships view here, you're saying that the population is 168 million, or almost 169 million. Why is that? And the reason is because if I were to look at that underlying data source, I just have the population. And what I did is I joined it by the crimes that occurred for a particular geographic area within London. And so what happened, it took, when it does that join, it's taking that 8 million, that population of 8 million, and it's combining it to every record that where I had a crime. So now that's why I get this giant population of 168 million, which isn't correct. And so the way you would have to do this within Tableau, you'd have to do a level of detail calculation here in order to take care of that, and in order to get it back to the population of 8.8 million. But if I were to go out to my data source in 20.2 and bring in the London population, although actually the London population is already there. But now I'm going to join this. Oops, hold on, let me remove this because I messed this up. So now if I bring out the crimes data source here and join this together, this is the field that I want to join on, is the LSOA code. And now I go over here to relationships. And now I want to bring in my population. I get 8.8 million. And the reason is because Tableau, when I did that, when Tableau actually ran the query for this, it didn't look at crimes database. It says all I'm bringing is population, and I'm bringing in population from the London population data source. So I don't need to join it to anything else. And so now I just need to show that measure what the sum of the population is, which is 8.8 million. And so that's something that Tableau will always do, is that you never ever lose any measures. The measures by themselves, when they're in that particular table, will always be true. You know, no matter what, I could join 20 other tables to this, and if all I want to see is population, I'm just going to get that 8.8 million, because I'm not bringing in any of the other tables. So this is what some of you may be familiar with it, what we call join calling. And sometimes when you were connected out to multiple tables in Tableau in previous versions, and people would say, oh, you know, this is really slow when I'm looking at this particular view. And that's because it would try to go and run all of those do all those joins, and it didn't need to do all those joins in every case. And so you would turn on that join calling, so that way it would help performance. And so that's kind of what it's doing here. It's just, so I don't need to do any other joins. I'm just looking at this because the only field I'm bringing in is from this population table. So again, I could have 50 joins in my data source, but it's not going to run any of them if I'm just bringing out one measure from one of the tables. So hopefully that makes sense and answered questions. I know it probably didn't. You may have additional questions, but are there any questions? Are you guys nervous about this? Excited about this? What do you think, Jim? Are you on mute?
He is on mute.
Yeah, he's on mute. So Steve, does this change the way that sets work across data sources? So in the current data model, you're limited to one data source for a set. They don't go across, but can you do sets at the logical level or relationship level?
So you're saying that, so I wouldn't so for example here, we'll just pretend that so this 2020.1 data source and 2020.2 data source, you're saying, can I create a set across both of those?
Yes.
So you would still have to know, Tableau would still have to know what are the tables that you're joining to. So if that were the case, you would still need to do that in your join here. You know, if this is coming from another data source, you're still going to have to do your join here. So that way, it's ultimately coming from a single data source. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hi, Steve. This is Jim. This is Jim again. Hey, you did a great job. Excellent job. I was working with this over the weekend, and could you, on that same screen that you're on, could you open up the connection and maybe show how if I wanted to do actually open up the connection, Steve, on the on the noodle itself.
Oh, here.
Yeah, and show everybody how you can add another field and what and how that whole thing works.
So this is where you would, if you need to, because obviously there's going to be times where you're going to join two different data sources or multiple tables here, where Tableau isn't going to know which fields it needs to join on, right? And so when that's the case, you can, when you click, it actually will happen beforehand. It will know right away. You'll get this join screen. And actually, let me remove this and add it here so you can see that one more time. So when I join this like this, you're going to get the edit relationship screen here. And then if this isn't the correct field to join on between these two data sources, just simply click the plus button here and then choose which field you want to join on. And maybe it might be multiple fields that you need to join on as well. So you can do that here.
My question with that there is it kind of an and or an or with the join or that relationship? So say, like here you're saying that we could have a relationship between this LSOA code, but what if also both data sets have a region or subregion, and those can be matched and have a relationship within the same table? Do you define that all there? And
if you needed to bring in that other field in order to do to join, yes, you could.
Yeah, Nick, it's an and.
Yeah, got it.
It's an and once you put a second field in
there.
The other thing I noted on this, Steve, is I had, and maybe I did this wrong. I was connecting like, 3 different dimensions there. And I had to do them one at a time. Every time I had to come back to the same screen and do another add. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh,
maybe,
like
maybe,
this.
maybe it was just the mechanics. Yeah. And I didn't.
Yeah.
But
What you
smart enough
mean.
to know that one's a mismatch.
Yeah, you're saying like
Yeah.
hitting to add more fields here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Which was,
that is. Yeah, it is kind of frustrating. That is how you do that.
okay. Now, I have one additional question, and we may not be able to do it from this screen, but
Mhm.
if I wanted to write in a join calculation
Hmm.
as opposed to just a straight join, would I have to go back?
Yeah. I'm not.
Like if I was going to put in, month of an
Yeah.
order date, and I
Right.
wanted to connect a month to a month, and
It wasn't there. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
well, I may have to go back to the conventional view to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't had come
Okay.
across that yet in here, so I'm
Okay.
not sure. I can
Okay.
find out though.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
That's a
we've
good
had
question though.
a few questions file in.
Okay.
One was just kind of a verbal applause that relationships would have saved so many headaches last year.
Mhm.
I bet.
Another one, I don't know that I'm doing these in, okay, yeah, there's a few that popped in all at the same time. So one is if you have level of detail fields
Mhm.
that calculate totals in prior versions of Tableau, will they continue to work as usual?
Yeah, so I guess maybe the first question I'll answer here, or I shouldn't say question I'll answer, but first thing that I'll state is that if I did this in 2020.1 or any version before this version, and I opened up Tableau, it would still be joined the same way you did it before. This won't automatically convert it to the relationships view. You'll still see your 2 tables up there. You'll still see that view, and I'll go to it here in a second. You'll still see this view that I have right here. This
Right.
is how we'll still open up.
I think what it does is in the higher level, I think what's called the logical layer, it creates migrated data. Like it's just called migrated data. And then you have to double click to get into what you're showing now, that physical layer of the literal join.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's gonna pop up here, and when if you double click this, it's not
Well,
that.
you're in the deeper layer. You're in the normal layer right now.
I am. So yeah, when it will come up like this, you'll see your data source as a single button or a box like this. If you double click on that, you'll see the classic version of how it was joined.
Sure. So then I guess the answer about this LOD calculations, they'll remain unchanged. Like
Yep.
you can still
Exactly.
use LODs.
Yep.
You can still specify the grain
Yep.
outside of the viz.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Those
And
will still all work. They won't go away.
still function the way they did.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. So this kind of comes, I'll just ask the question here. So it says, what is the difference with blending data? This feels like this is actually blending data. And then if you want to use a join, you can link the similar columns.
Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit like what you were talking about. So, but the issue with blending data is that you wouldn't be able to get the detail. So if you were joining and then there was multiple records, that's where you would get that that really frustrating asterisk would appear, right? Because it wouldn't be able to go down any deeper than that. That's kind of the issue with doing the blend. And then the other thing is that so with the blend as well, there are some times where, well, again, when you're doing relationships, I could have well, blend, you're not going to be able to, it's not going to do it dynamically, right? So depending on the viz and what you have in the viz, you know, you don't need to use that join, right? So in some cases, it could be faster, a lot faster. But blend, I guess I wouldn't, since we went to federated joins some time ago, I found myself very rarely, if ever, using a blend anymore.
Yeah, blend is kind of the last resort.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have cross database joins and
Right.
now relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
I think on that
Just jumping in on blends, I still see a lot of questions on blend, and I'm so glad to see this, Steve, because I'm going to play around with it quite a bit. I advise people not to use blends because you are working with aggregated data.
Yeah.
And this looks to me like and I think Nick said it's the best of both worlds. I want to do a little experimenting with it, but I'm really pleased with it.
Yeah, you know, definitely, you definitely want to experiment, right? I mean, I wouldn't just like jump in and change all your data sources to that. You know, I would, you know, test it out, make sure that it's going to perform the way you expect it to perform, and pull back to, you know, the right what you're expecting as well.
I do, as a follow-on to that, and some of this has to do with just communicating with fellow Tableauers.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the way to best distinguish between the two kinds, quote unquote, of relationships? Because now we have relationships in the data source, but we still have that edit relationships when you're in the worksheet level and defining the relationships for data blending.
Yeah.
Has any of that terminology been changed, or?
Nope, that's still there. Yeah, it is still there because, I mean, it is valid, right? Because you're editing the relationship. Because if you look at it, and when you're, you know, in this view here, right, and you come up here to data to edit, actually it's blend relationships.
There we go.
That was changed there. Yeah, so now it's not just edit. Before it was edit relationships. Now it's edit blend relationships.
So there's the distinction.
Yep.
Great. And everyone, if these answers didn't quite answer your question, just pop in with another question and we'll restate it and get to what you need to know. There is one other question here that isn't quite specific to 2020.2. Actually, it's not specific to 2020.2, but it's asking about calculating weighted averages in Tableau.
Mm-hmm.
And right now they're calculating those weighted averages in the data source, or trying to upload the data raw, and they're just trying to know what the best way is. And I guess I think I might have an answer off the cuff, but I'll defer to you, Steve, if you have a quick answer. Even you, Jim, you've probably answered a question like this on the forums. So if either one of you want to flip a coin.
Go ahead,
Steve,
Jim.
I can get you off the hook here if you want.
Go ahead, please.
I have something that I put on my blog like 2 weeks ago that gives 3 examples of how to do weighted averages inside Tableau. I will type. I'm looking at the question also. I'll type the link to that into the question here, but it'll give you examples of how to do it and how to do it both at the subtotal level and the total level within a data set. But it's a very good question. The question comes up a lot, so it's not unique here. I'm just going to type in a location here for my blog.
Okay.
So Steve, I have a question for you about Tableau Prep. You mentioned incremental updates.
Mm-hmm.
I played with those a while back when they introduced those in Tableau. And the downside for me was you had to sync the whole table for it to work. And in my medical environment, we couldn't do that. So is that still the case with incremental updates, or can you now use a custom query and specify a time frame for doing the incremental updates?
I think you kind of lost me there. So Well, I'm not sure what you mean. You had to sync the whole table. You mean because of your data set, you were
All of it.
updating historical data, or like so
The
data
way
that
that
happened.
it was originally released was it would sync the whole table and then it would check that table for anything that was new and then add that to your extract but it wouldn't.
Oh, because you had to, yeah, because you had to choose a particular field, right, in order to do the incremental.
Correct.
Yeah. So this you don't have to, because actually I did this on my own data set that I had. You don't actually have to choose a field to choose that it needs to look at. So it can do that incremental refresh. I'll double check. I'll double check and see if it's kind of the same thing. But because now I think about it, it might not be the same thing that you're referring to. I'll double check.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't exactly a question, but I do want to call out some of the features that you mentioned in passing for server that got me a little excited. Actually, this may not be all server, but data lineage.
Oh,
Something we've been needing. And then filter by warnings is exciting, as well as stale content view, because having things refresh when you don't need them anymore is just, it's literally a waste.
oh yeah. It consumes a lot of resources, doing extracts and things like that nobody's utilizing anymore. And the data quality, I think that's a big one too. Being able to know, if there is an issue, because I actually had to do this on our internal ones this past week, because I was having an issue with how something was updating in a viz, and lo and behold, there was an issue with the data source. Real quick before I leave, where should I post those the links that I had? Should I put them in the Q&A? Because I don't see a chat.
Put them in. Let's see if I can give you access to chat. I thought you would have it. Change. Testing. You should see it down at the bottom. So if you move your cursor on Zoom,
Yep.
There should be a chat button right next to Q&A. If not, try the more button, the ellipses off to the right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There it is. Gotcha. Okay.
And yeah, just make sure it says all participants or all
panelists.
attendees and panelists.
There we go. There's one for releases. Here's the coming soon. And here's the features.
If anybody has any parting questions, maybe even more generic, it might not be Steve who attempts to answer. I think he has to drop off.
Yeah, I do have to drop, unfortunately. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And
hey, Steve.
Yes.
Great, Steve.
Great presentation. It's good to finally meet you.
Yeah, I think we met a couple times.
Okay.
But nice to meet you again. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll pause a moment longer. I'll turn video back on. But yeah, if you have any questions, or we'll monitor chat now as well. So yes, looks like Jim put his links in both the Q&A as well as the chat. So if you need those, they check there. Steve was also kind enough to put the links that he had in his PowerPoint in the chat. So those are available. Be sure to grab those before you bounce. Let's see, participants. And again, we're happy to entertain any other questions or comments that you might have. We'd love some feedback on this topic and any ideas or requests for topics in the coming sessions. I think, let's see.
Just a quick,
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
a quick note about next month that Sarah Battersby is going to speak on mapping. And that will be the last Wednesday of June, whatever that date is. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Let's see. That would be the 24th. So June 24th. Understanding the audience here is probably a little biased, but we're open to feedback on whether this time works better for you, like this was earlier than we normally meet in the day. The recording will be available. We'll need to get the link from our Tableau contact, but once we have that, we can share that. The means by which I'm not sure right off. Yeah, because I know we can email through Splash, but maybe we'll put the link in the various chats of upcoming sessions, if nothing else. Let's see. Thanks, Lindsay, for that. What else? So we got the topic announced. It's mapping, which is great. We'll be covering mapping in our study hall sessions, but I would bet money that I'm not as good at mapping as our guest speaker. So be sure, even if you're part of the study halls, do attend the Tableau user group because she'll know more than I do. Let's see, any other announcements from the leadership or even announcements from our fellow attendees? All right. Hearing and seeing none, I will stop the recording.